All right, this is my last story from the read alouds that I would have done with you in the classroom, and it's one of my very favorites because it, for some students that may have had a hard year, it really tells you that when you start over another school year, you get to start completely fresh. And this year is kind of different than all the rest because you didn't get to finish, but you still get a fresh start in the fall. So it's called The Troublemaker. In second grade, I was a troublemaker in Ms. Kirk's class, and everyone knew it, and it really does say Ms. Kirk's second grade class. When I got into an argument over whose turn it was on the swing, kids in my class whispered, "Stay away from Justin. He's a troublemaker." All of the teachers knew me too. When I ran through the halls, I could hear them saying, "Watch out for that one. He's a troublemaker." But in third grade, Mrs. Richardson was my teacher. She met us at the door on the very first day of school and showed us to our seats. We had to fill out cards saying what we wanted to be when we grew up. I didn't know what to write, so I looked around the room, and on the wall next to me was a poster of a tall man with dark, sharp eyes. It said, "Langston Hughes, Great American Poet." On my card, I wrote, "Justin Flynn, Poet." Mrs. Richardson collected the cards and looked through them. "Justin!" she exclaimed. "You want to be a poet? How wonderful!" My best friend, Ray, started to laugh, and several others joined in, but Mrs. Richardson interrupted them. "I'm sure that Justin writes nice poetry. Hopefully, he'll get to share some with us soon." The laughter stopped, but I sank down in my chair. Share some of it? I thought. I've never even written a poem in my entire life. The laughter, the next morning, Mrs. Richardson greeted me at the door and said, "I'm looking forward to reading some of your poetry." When I got to my desk, I pulled out some paper. I was stuck. I was going to have to find a way to write a poem. And at the top of the page, I wrote school. "I go to school," I wrote on the first line. What rhymes with school? Fool, drool, cool. School is cool, I added. That was silly. I wadded up the paper and shoved it aside, and I tried to come up with a new start, but then Ray nudged my arm. "Hey, Justin," he whispered, "throw that paper ball at Nikita." "Shh, I'm busy," I answered. "Aw, come on," he whispered. "It'll be funny." I ignored him, and I kept trying to figure out what kind of poem to write. "Fine," he said, "I'll do it myself." As I concentrated on my poem, Ray tossed the paper across the room, and smack! It hit Nikita right in the forehead. Mrs. Richardson turned around to see where the paper had come from, and then she looked straight into my eyes and said firmly, "Justin, we are not going to have that kind of behavior in my class. Move your desk to the back of the room and face the wall." "But it wasn't—" I tried to protest, but I pulled my desk to the back. "Here's the worksheet for you to do while the rest of the class does an activity. I'll talk to you, or I'll let you know when I think you're ready to rejoin the group." I grabbed my chair and I shoved it into my desk, and I snatched up my notebook from my bag and I yanked out a piece of paper. She wants me to be a paper thrower. I can be a paper thrower, I thought. I balled up that paper in a tight wad. I turned around in my seat and I eyed Ray. He was hard at work on his assignment. Suddenly I knew that all Mrs. Richardson would see was that Ray was hard at work and I was causing trouble. So I twisted back around and I put my head on my desk and I was mad. I wanted to turn around and yell that it wasn't fair and I didn't do it. I smoothed out my paper and I wrote the word mad. I stared at the letters and then I wrote them like this, M-A-D. I was going to fill in the lines next to them. By the time I had finished writing, I felt better, and I had an idea. I did the worksheet as quickly as I could, and then I got a clean sheet of paper and I wrote a letter. "Dear Mrs. Richardson, I am not a troublemaker. I am a poet." And this is what it says M. "My fist tightens and my head hurts." The A stands for as I try not to yell that I, and then the D is, did not throw my paper. Please can I move my desk back where it belongs? Justin. I signed my name and Mrs. Richardson started calling her groups to line up for recess. She called me last, but instead of lining up, I brought my paper to her. She looked at the paper with surprise. "Justin, I'm so sorry," she said. "Thank you for telling me in a mature way. We'll move your desk back as soon as we get back from recess." I couldn't believe it. It had actually worked. I could stick with this poetry business. As we walked down the hall, I came up with an idea for another poem. I'd write one about Mrs. Richardson. While I jotted my idea down on scrap paper, I heard a teacher pointing me out to Mrs. Richardson, saying, "You better watch out for that boy." "Oh, yes," said Mrs. Richardson. "I know all about Justin. He is a poet." And that's my favorite part, when one teacher thinks that Justin's a really bad actor, but Mrs. Richardson's decided to give him another chance. And that's what you guys have when you go over to Southside. Fresh new chance to do anything that you want. See ya.